Recorded.
All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman.
All right. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. Inshallah, tonight we will start from where we left off last week, giving lessons from Surah Yusuf that we can apply in our current situation. So last week we started with the explanation of the beginning of the surah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Yusuf alayhi salam as a young child and how he had this amazing dream that he saw 11 stars and the sun and the moon prostrating to him, making sujood to him. So that's an amazing dream. And he went to his father, Yaqub alayhi salam, who was a prophet of Allah, and he told him about this dream. And the first thing that his father advised him, Yaqub alayhi salam, said to Yusuf alayhi salam, لا تقصص رؤياك على إخوتك فيكيدوا لك كيدا. Don't tell this dream to your brothers. Don't let them know about what you saw in this dream, because if you tell them about it, then they will, out of their jealousy, they will plot against you, right? So eventually, that's exactly what the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam did. They plotted against him, just like their father was afraid of. They had this jealousy towards Yusuf alayhi salam. They saw the special relationship that Yaqub alayhi salam had with Yusuf alayhi salam, and they wanted that love and attention from their father all for themselves. So they thought, like, we need to get rid of Yusuf. If we get rid of him, then we will have the love and the attention of our father all for ourselves. So they plotted against their brother, their own brother, Yusuf alayhi salam. So it reached such an extent that they were ready to kill him. They were ready to kill their own brother out of their jealousy. But the oldest one amongst the brothers, who was the wisest one amongst them, he said, that's going too far. We can't kill him. Rather, we'll just throw him in a well, right? And then some caravan that's passing by, they're going to be getting water from that well. They'll find him, and they'll do whatever they want with him, right? But we don't want to kill him. So they agreed to do that. So they took Yusuf alayhi salam out into the wilderness, and they dropped him into a well. And he was in that well for a period of 3 days, according to the Mufassirin. So alone in the darkness of that well for a period of 3 days. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to give him comfort during that time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired him and told him that, there's going to come a day where you're going to remind your brothers of what they have done to you. وَأَوْحِينَا إِلَيْهِ لَتُنَبِّئَنَّهُمْ بِأَمْرِهِمْ هَذَا وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him comfort in this time of difficulty for him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to him that you will inform them of what they're doing. You will inform them of what they have done to you one day. And they will not realize that you are the one whom they did this to. They will not recognize who you are, but you will tell them about this incident, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him this comfort in this time of isolation and this time of difficulty. So he spent 3 days alone in that well. And during this time, of course, as we mentioned last week, the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam, they went back to their father. They made up a story. They said a wolf came and ate him. We talked about that in detail last week. Yaqub alayhi salam, the father, he knew that they were lying, right? But what was his reaction to this difficulty? He lost his son, right? Now he's separated from his beloved son. But what he says is, قَالَ بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. You people, you have made this up, right? I know that you're lying. فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. But patience is beautiful, right? So no matter what type of difficulty you're going through, no matter what type of hardship you're facing in life, if you deal with it with patience, then you will find the beauty in doing that. فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. Patience is beautiful. And patience being beautiful means that the results of your patience are always going to be fruitful and beneficial. If you remain patient, even when it's difficult to be patient, you remain patient, at the end of the road, you will see the benefits of that patience. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow you to see the fruits of your patience in this world and in the hereafter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives the reward to the patient ones without any type of accountability. So it's an unlimited reward. It's an unlimited reward. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala he gives glad tidings to the people of patience. No matter what type of calamity befalls you, if you remain patient, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَيْهِمْ صَلَوَاتٌ مِّن رَّبِّهِمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُهْتَدُونَ. Give glad tidings to the patient ones, الصابرين, those people whom when any calamity befalls them, they say, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. This is one of the signs of your patience, that when any calamity, any difficulty comes your way, you say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Surely we belong to Allah, and surely to Allah we will return. For these people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised, أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَيْهِمْ صَلَوَاتٌ مِّن رَّبِّهِمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ. These people will have blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon them, and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon them. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُهْتَدُونَ. And these are the rightly guided people, right? So this is the benefit of patience. So Yaqub alayhi salam, being a prophet of Allah, he understood this. So even though he is going through the most difficult time in his life, losing his son, right? Being separated from his son, he says, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. Surely patience is beautiful. I'm going to remain patient upon the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانُ عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one whose help and assistance is sought regarding what you are describing. I know you are lying, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help me against this lie, right? So eventually what happens is that a caravan does come by where that well is situated. And that well is in Philistine. Yaqub alayhi salam and his family, they were based in Philistine, right? So eventually a caravan that's passing from another land on its way to Egypt, it passes through Philistine on the way to Egypt, right? And as they're passing through, of course, they take rest stops from time to time. Even, you know, when you and I, when we go on road trips, for example, right? If you're going on a long road trip, you're going from one state to another state, let's say, right? You're going to stop numerous times on the way for rest. You're going to stop, you're going to rest, you're going to refuel, you're going to, you know, go into the mini market and buy some snacks and buy some drinks, right? You're going to do that multiple times during your journey. So that's exactly what the people of the past used to do as well, right? On long journeys, they would stop from time to time. And they would obviously want to stop in places where they could get water. They would stop by wells so they could get water. That would last them at least until the next rest stop. So what happened in this situation is that there was a caravan on its way to Egypt, and they passed by this area where that well that Yusuf alayhi salam was in, where that well was situated. So they stopped there and they said, okay, let's go and get some water. So they sent their water boys, basically. You know, each caravan, they would have businessmen, they would have people with merchandise, and they would have assistants and helpers along with them as well. And you know, these assistants and helpers, they would take care of the travel duties, like, you know, preparing food, cleaning up. They would have someone to go and get water, right? So they would have specific people with them for specific types of jobs that they needed done. So they would have like a water boy as well, a person who would go to the wells and get water. So they sent their water boy, and the Mufassirin have mentioned that he was a man named Malik ibn Za'ar. So they sent him to go get water. So he goes to the well, and Yusuf alayhi salam is at the bottom of this well, you know, waiting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save him. So he's been here for a period of 3 days now, alone, in the darkness, right? And he's a young kid. He's only 12 or 13 years old, right? So this is a very frightening time for him. So eventually, Malik ibn Za'ar, he gets his bucket and he ties it to the rope. And if you just imagine how these wells are set up, right? So basically, it's a well, it's a hole in the ground that is basically surrounded by stones, right? And there's a rope that you tie to a bucket, and then you send it down, right? And it hits the water at the bottom, right? And once it's filled with water, you pull it back up. You pull the rope back up. So that's how it works. So they took their bucket, they tied it to the end of the rope, and they sent it down. So Yusuf alayhi salam, after 3 days of not seeing any type of, any type of glimmer of hope to be saved, After 3 days, he sees this rope coming down. So he realizes this is his chance, right? The rope comes down, they get the water, but Yusuf alayhi salam hangs on to the rope as well. So when they're pulling it up, it's heavier than normal, right? Because it has that bucket of water and it has a 13-year-old boy hanging onto it as well. So it's harder to pull up. But eventually, they're able to pull it up. And when they pull it up, they are shocked to see this young boy hanging onto it. And Yusuf alayhi salam, he was extremely good looking. He was very handsome, right? Even at this young age. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that Yusuf alayhi salam was given half of all beauty, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he divided beauty. He divided good looks into two parts, into two halves. One half was given to Yusuf alayhi salam, right? And the other half was given to everyone else, right? So you can just imagine how extremely good looking Yusuf alayhi salam was. So they pull him out and they see this young boy, right? And you know, at that time, slavery was something that was very prevalent, right? People would buy and sell slaves. That was a very lucrative business. So that's the first thought that came to their mind. That look, we found this boy. We can sell him as a slave, and we can make a lot of money doing that. So that's what they decided to do. They got really excited when they saw this boy for that reason. So when they pulled him out, the person who pulled him out, he said, "Ya bushra hadha ghulam." He said to the people who were with him, "Glad tidings. We went to get water, but we come out with this boy. We can make a lot of money off of him." وَأَسَرُّوهُ بِضَاعَةً. And they decided to hide him from the rest of the caravan, right? Because they knew that the businessmen in the caravan, they would want a share of whatever profits they're going to make as well. If they say that, look, we found this boy in the well and we're going to sell him, they would not just let them sell him on their own. They would want to share the profits amongst themselves as well. So they decided not to inform the rest of the caravan who this boy was, right? So they tried to hide it from them, the reality of the situation. وَأَسَرُّوهُ بِضَاعَةً وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِمَا يَعْمَلُونَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he had full knowledge, of course, of what they were doing. So when they brought this boy back to the caravan, they said that, yes, this is a boy that the people who own the well, they gave us this boy to sell him in Egypt on their behalf. So we don't own it. So we can't sell him on his own. We're just doing it, you know, as a favor for those people. So that the people of the caravan, the businessmen of the caravan, wouldn't try to take a share in the profits. That's what Malik and the few people who were with him said. They said, like, you know, this is not ours. This belongs to these people, and you know, we're just doing a favor for them and taking him to Egypt to sell him, and that money, it goes to them. It is not ours, right? That's what they said, in order to keep the profits for themselves. All right, now, while all of this was going on, right, during these 3 days that Yusuf alayhi salam was alone in the well, the oldest brother, right, and we mentioned the oldest brother was, out of all of them, even though, you know, he was guilty, just like the other brothers were, of trying to get rid of Yusuf alayhi salam, still at the same time, he's the one who convinced them not to kill him. So he was the most sensible out of all of them, the oldest one. And the Mufassirin have mentioned that his name was Yahuda. He was the most sensible amongst them, and he had a little bit more compassion than the rest of them, right? So what he was doing these 3 days while Yusuf alayhi salam was in the well, he was actually going to the well, right, and dropping food in the well, because he didn't want Yusuf alayhi salam, you know, to die of hunger, right? So he was going to that well from time to time and dropping food during those 3 days so that Yusuf alayhi salam could eat. All right, now, on the third day, he went as usual to drop some food into the well, but this time he noticed that Yusuf alayhi salam was not there, that he was gone from the well. He was taken out. So now he realized, okay, somebody must have come and taken him. And this is what they wanted, right? So the older brother, he goes back to his other brothers and he tells them the situation. He tells them, I went to give food and he's not in the well anymore. So they decide to see what happened. They decide, okay, let's make sure that he's going to be taken away and, you know, he won't come back to us. So all of the brothers, they go back to where the well was, and the caravan was still there. That same caravan that had found him, they were still there. So the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam, they found Yusuf alayhi salam with those people, right? And they told the people of the caravan, or they told Malik and the few people who had actually pulled him out of the well, they told him that, yeah, this kid, he's actually our slave and he ran away from us. They didn't tell him, of course, that this was their own brother. They said, yeah, he's a runaway slave. But, if you want, you can take him, we'll sell him to you. And Yusuf alayhi salam is hearing his own brothers talk about him in such a way that, yeah, he was our slave and he ran away from us. So this is very painful, of course, for Yusuf alayhi salam to hear his brothers talk about him in such a way, lie about him in such a way that he's our slave, right? But Yusuf alayhi salam was scared to tell the truth. He was scared to say anything, because if he revealed to the people who he was, that no, actually I'm their brother, and they threw me in the well, if he told the whole story, he was afraid that they would give him back to the brothers. And if they gave him back to his brothers, he was afraid now this time his brothers are going to kill him. First they threw him in the well, and now he said, he thought to himself, if I have to go back with them this time to get rid of me, for sure they're going to kill me. So he went along with their story. When they told Malik that, yes, this is a runaway slave, Yusuf alayhi salam, he didn't try to deny that at all. He let them believe this as well, right? So Malik, he said to the brothers, okay, if he's a runaway slave, then if you want to get him off your hands, I will buy him from you. But I don't have much that I can offer you. I can only give you 20 dirhams. 20 dirhams it's a very small amount of money, right? 20 dirhams. Now the brothers of Yusuf, they were not looking for money. They just wanted to get rid of Yusuf alayhi salam. They weren't trying to make money off of him. So they just immediately agreed to this price. They said, okay, 20 dirhams, no problem. So Malik gave them 20 dirhams, and they split those 20 dirhams amongst themselves. And there were 10 brothers, right? So each of them only got 2 dirhams. 2 dirhams for Yusuf alayhi salam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about this, وَشَرَوْهُ بِثَمَنٍ بَخْسٍ دَرَاهِمَ مَعْدُودَةٍ وَكَانُوا فِيهِ مِنَ الزَّاهِدِينَ. They sold him, the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam, they sold him for a very cheap price. Only 20 dirhams, right? 2 dirhams each. Very, very cheap. وَكَانُوا فِيهِ مِنَ الزَّاهِدِينَ. And they didn't realize actually how valuable this boy was going to become. Yusuf alayhi salam, he would become a prophet of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would raise his status in this world and in the hereafter, and they sold him for 20 dirhams. وَكَانُوا فِيهِ مِنَ الزَّاهِدِينَ. That they didn't recognize the greatness of this boy. All right, so now Malik, he purchased Yusuf alayhi salam from the brothers. He gave them their 20 dirhams, and the caravan goes along on its journey, and it reaches its final destination, which is Egypt, right? So now Yusuf alayhi salam has moved from Palestine to Egypt, and this is something that's very, very relevant as well, and it's something that's very significant. That now Yusuf alayhi salam, even though he's from Palestine, now he ends up in Egypt. Many times people, when they're talking about the story of Musa alayhi salam and Bani Israel, one of the questions that is asked is, why was Musa alayhi salam and his people, Bani Israel, why were they in Egypt at that time? Bani Israel, they were originally from Palestine. So why was Musa alayhi salam born in Egypt? And Harun alayhi salam was born in Egypt. And Bani Israel, they were under the Fir'aun and his tyranny and his oppression in Egypt. So how did they get to Egypt? This is a common question that is asked. And the answer to this question is the reason why they were in Egypt was because that's where Yusuf alayhi salam was taken. Yusuf alayhi salam was taken from Palestine to Egypt. Eventually, Yusuf alayhi salam, he settled in Egypt. He became very powerful in Egypt. And then eventually, he called for his family to come and join him in Egypt. So Yaqub alayhi salam and the other sons of Yaqub alayhi salam, the wives of Yaqub alayhi salam, they all came and settled in Egypt. And that is how Bani Israel became situated in Egypt, and this lasted for centuries until the time of Musa alayhi salam. Then finally Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Musa alayhi salam to leave Egypt. When the Fir'aun was oppressing them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Musa alayhi salam to take Bani Israel and leave Egypt. They left Egypt and they ended up back in Palestine. So for centuries, Bani Israel, they remained in Egypt, right? So this decision of the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam to throw him in the well. And the caravan that found him in that well took him to Egypt. This decision, right, even though it may not have seemed like a very big thing or a very consequential decision to them. They thought, okay, we're just getting rid of Yusuf alayhi salam, right? That was their intention. Their intention was just to get the attention of their father for themselves and get rid of Yusuf alayhi salam. But in effect, this one decision that they made to throw Yusuf alayhi salam into that well, it affected the course of history for centuries. By Yusuf alayhi salam ending up in Egypt, and then Bani Israel settling in Egypt, right? So the story that you read of Musa alayhi salam and Fir'aun and all of this, right? Why were they there in Egypt? That is because of, if you can trace it back, to the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam throwing him into that well. And then the people finding him in that well, taking him into Egypt. So sometimes a decision that you may not realize can have very far-reaching consequences. Their intention in throwing Yusuf alayhi salam in that well, it was not something that they thought would have such far-reaching consequences that would last for centuries. But that one decision, it did have far-reaching consequences that not only affected them and their family, but it affected generations and it affected people for centuries. That one decision, right? So one lesson we can learn about that from our current situation, right? If you look at the virus, the coronavirus that everyone in the world is scared about right now, and you can see that it's changing the way that people interact with each other. It's changing a lot of the norms of society, right? And if you trace it back to its root, right? How did this virus start? Right? There were people in the Wuhan market buying these animals and eating them, and that's how the virus started. So a decision, a personal decision like this to eat these creatures, right? It started this virus, and that virus spread, and now that is having far-reaching consequences that are going and spreading throughout the world, and we don't know how long these consequences are going to last, even after the pandemic is gone. Inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make that day soon. We don't know how things are going to be in a post-coronavirus world, right? Even when the virus is gone, are people's interactions with each other and the way that people deal with each other, is it going to return to how it was before, or is this going to have far-reaching consequences that will last for years? Allah knows best. We're going to see how that plays out, inshallah. But the point is that sometimes one decision that you make, and you may make it for whatever reason, and you don't realize what effect that decision is going to have. Sometimes that decision can have very, very, very far-reaching consequences that you could never even imagine, right? And that's what we're seeing right now. It was a decision of a few people in one place. It was a personal decision. They didn't realize that it's going to have such an effect on the world, but it did have such an effect on the world, right? So sometimes that type of thing happens. So you have to be very careful with every decision that you make. You have to be very careful with every decision that you make, even if you think it's something minor, if you think it's something that won't affect others, if you think it's something that's just personal, right? You have to think about it from all angles and realize that sometimes a wrong decision that you make may not only affect you and those around you, but it could sometimes affect the whole world, not only for a short period of time, but for a very long period of time. So that's something that we need to think about as well. That's how Bani Israel ended up in Egypt. All right, so anyways, they take Yusuf alayhi salam and they reach Egypt. Now, when they reach Egypt, they decide to take Yusuf alayhi salam to the slave market and sell him. That's the purpose they got him anyways to Egypt. They want to sell him as a slave, right? So they go to the slave market, and the people at that market, they see Yusuf alayhi salam. They've never ever seen any boy so handsome as this boy before. They've never seen anyone so good looking in their lives. So the way that those slave markets used to work is that they would sell the slaves through an auction. So they would say, this is the slave, the starting price is this. If anyone wants to go higher, you can bid higher. So then someone would bid higher, then someone would outbid that person, then someone would outbid that person. Basically exactly how an auction works, right? That's how they would sell the slaves. So Yusuf alayhi salam, because of his looks, everybody wanted him, right? All of these people, they wanted him as their own servant, as their own slave. So the price keeps going higher and higher and higher. Someone bids a certain price, and the next person outbids him. Then the next person outbids him. It reached such a level where the price reached such a high level that Yusuf alayhi salam was finally sold to the person who bought him in Egypt. He was sold for his weight in gold, silver, silk, and musk. Right? So he's a 12, 13-year-old boy. Imagine. He was sold for the amount of wealth of his own weight, how much ever he weighed, in gold and silver and silk and musk. That is just an unimaginable amount of money. It's a huge price that he was sold for, right? And obviously, this is not a price that just any common person could afford, right? It's only something that someone who is extremely rich, like, someone who you would call today like a 1%er, could afford, right? So obviously, the person who bought him for this price was one of the wealthiest people in Egypt. And usually, the wealthiest people are also the most powerful people. So this man who bought him, he was extremely wealthy, and he was extremely powerful as well, politically powerful as well. And he was actually the Secretary of Treasury of Egypt. He was the person who was in charge of all of the finances of Egypt. So extremely rich, extremely powerful. He is the one who ended up buying Yusuf alayhi salam in Egypt. And the Mufassirin have mentioned that the name of this man was Qitfir. The name of this treasurer of Egypt, this rich man, his name was Qitfir. So Qitfir, he buys Yusuf alayhi salam and brings him to his home. And of course, the home is like a palace, right? It's an extremely beautiful mansion. And he takes the boy, Yusuf alayhi salam, into the home, and he tells his wife, Qitfir, his wife's name is Zulaykha. So Qitfir tells Zulaykha, look, I have bought this slave, this young boy, make sure that he is well taken care of. And he mentions the reasons why he wants this boy to be well taken care of. وَقَالَ الَّذِي اشْتَرَاهُ مِن مِصْرَ لِامْرَأَتِهِ أَكْرِمِي مَثْوَاهُ عَسَىٰ أَن يَنْفَعَنَا أَوْ نَتَّخِذَهُ وَلَدًا. So he takes Yusuf alayhi salam to the home, and he tells his wife, make sure that this boy is well taken care of, treat him well, because perhaps he will be of some benefit to us. How could he be of benefit to them? The Mufassirin have mentioned two possibilities that Qitfir may have been thinking of regarding getting benefit from Yusuf alayhi salam. And he could have been thinking about both of these things, actually. One benefit is that, he'll be our servant, and, he will serve us, and that's the benefit that we'll get out of him. Another benefit he may have been thinking of is that perhaps we can sell him. He's a slave. Perhaps we can sell him at even a higher price than we bought him for, right? And make some money off of him. So, عَسَىٰ أَن يَنْفَعَنَا, perhaps he will be of some benefit to us, either by we can make money off of him, or he will serve us. أَوْ نَتَّخِذَهُ وَلَدًا, or maybe we can even adopt him, and we can raise him as our own child. This was another thought that Qitfir had. Maybe we can just treat him as our own son, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about this. Now think about how Yusuf alayhi salam must have been feeling in this situation. He's separated from his family. He's in a new land, a new country, living with new people now. He's still a kid. He's 12, 13 years old, right? Basically ripped away from his old life and thrusted into a totally new life as a kid. So this is not something that would be psychologically easy for Yusuf alayhi salam, right? Having to adjust to this new normal now, right? But what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about that point when Yusuf alayhi salam was purchased by this man as a slave and taken to his home? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about this particular point in time? He says, وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. That this is how we established Yusuf on the earth. So this was the beginning of the establishment of Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf alayhi salam, over the years, eventually he would reach a very, very high status in this dunya. And this was the starting point of that. This is the foundation of that. وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. But Yusuf alayhi salam at this time, what must he have been thinking? He must have been thinking like, what's happening to me? I mean, I'm taken away from my family. I'm taken away from my land. I have to live in this new place now, this new country with these new people, right? So he didn't know what's going to happen in the future. It must have been a very, very scary time for Yusuf alayhi salam. He must have had a lot of anxiety in that situation. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who knows what he's doing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what his plan for Yusuf alayhi salam is. And this is the first step in establishing Yusuf and giving him that power on this earth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. This is how we established Yusuf on the earth. So what lesson can we learn from this? Sometimes you're put in a very strange situation, right? A situation that may give you anxiety, a situation that may scare you, a situation that you don't know how you're going to get through it. You don't know what's going to happen in the future, right? You may have to adjust completely something that you're used to your whole life. Suddenly you're taken out of that and you're thrust into a new normal, right? But perhaps, you don't know, even though you're scared and you're understandably scared, perhaps this is the beginning of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving you a type of establishment in your life. This is perhaps the beginning of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala setting you up for something that is going to be very good for you in the future. Right? That's another lesson we can learn. A lot of people during these times, they're very uncertain about their futures, right? You had a routine, perhaps this routine has been going on for years. You had this job, you're going to work, you're doing, you have your life that you're used to. Now suddenly in the past few weeks, everything has just changed, right? So you're having to adjust a lot, make a lot of adjustments in your life. Some people maybe have lost their jobs. Some people are going through other types of difficulties, psychological difficulties, financial difficulties, whatever it may be. But everyone is having to adjust to a new situation, right? But perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has something very good for you in store, like he did for Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf alayhi salam was thrust into a completely new situation as well. But that is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described as the tamkeen, the establishment of Yusuf alayhi salam. That was the first step of Yusuf alayhi salam reaching a very high status in this dunya. So that's a lesson we can learn as well. Sometimes we are put into difficult situations. We don't know how things are going to play out, but have optimism and have high hopes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this is perhaps the beginning of something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring a lot of good out of it, right? So be optimistic and have those high hopes in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And this is how we established Yusuf on this earth. وَلِنُعَلِّمَهُ مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ. And this is how we taught Yusuf alayhi salam, or we set Yusuf alayhi salam up to learn the interpretation of dreams. So just like his father, Yaqub alayhi salam, was able to interpret dreams, Yusuf alayhi salam was also given that gift, the ability to interpret people's dreams, right? And that becomes very significant later on in the story. Yusuf alayhi salam interpreting people's dreams. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set him up and taught him this knowledge as well, how to interpret dreams. وَاللَّهُ غَالِبٌ عَلَى أَمْرِهِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is always the one who is victorious in whatever he wants to do. That no one can ever overpower Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People may come up with their plans to do this and that, but the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always overcomes and overpowers other plans. Every single time. Wallahu ghalibun ala amri. That whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has planned, no other plan can circumvent the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. But the reality is that most people, they don't understand this concept, right? They don't understand that the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be stopped. The plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always come to fruition, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan overpowers everyone else's plans. Wallahu ghalibun ala amri, walakinna akthara an-nasi la ya'lamun. Most people, they don't realize this. They don't know this. All right, so Yusuf alayhi salam, now he had to adjust to this new life of his. He stayed with these people, with his family for a number of years. And Qitfir, this Secretary of Treasury of Egypt, he treated Yusuf alayhi salam very well. He really treated him very well. He honored him. He provided him with what he needed. He was really, really very good to him. Usually when you think of an owner, a person who has a slave, you will think, okay, slave owner, he must have treated him very harshly. He must have beat him, this, that. But Qitfir was not like that with Yusuf alayhi salam. He treated him very kindly, and he basically treated him like a son, right? But when Yusuf alayhi salam became a bit older, when he was bought by Qitfir and he was brought into the household, he was still a kid. He was like 12, 13 years old, right? Once he stayed there for a number of years, eventually he became a man. He's not a kid anymore. Now he became a man. He's a grown-up now. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about this point when Yusuf alayhi salam grew up and he became an adult, وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. When Yusuf alayhi salam, he reached an age of maturity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him wisdom and knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him wisdom and knowledge. So he has, physically he's very good looking, and his mind is also very sharp as well. Very knowledgeable, very smart, and very wise, right? So now as an adult, the woman of the house, the wife of Qitfir, Zulaykha, she basically became infatuated with Yusuf alayhi salam. Because he's so good looking. He's so handsome. So, she's seeing him around the house, all the time. And she became infatuated with him, right? And the Mufassirin have some different opinions regarding the age of Yusuf alayhi salam at this point. Some of them said that this happened when he was 33 years old. Some of them said 30. Some of them said 20. Some of them said between 18 and 30. So, there's a lot of differences of opinion regarding the age of Yusuf alayhi salam at this point. But he was an adult. He had reached adulthood, right? So at this point, the wife of Qitfir, the wife of the one whom Yusuf alayhi salam is staying in their house, she became infatuated with Yusuf alayhi salam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions what happens here. He says, وَرَاوَدَتْهُ الَّتِي هُوَ فِي بَيْتِهَا عَنْ نَفْسِهِ. That she, this woman, Zulaykha, she desired Yusuf alayhi salam, right? She wanted to actually commit an act of immorality with him against his will, عَنْ نَفْسِهِ. So she called him, and he didn't know what she wanted, right? But he's basically their servant, so he goes into the room, right? And then what does she do? وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ. She closes all of the doors. Now, remember, this is like a huge, beautiful mansion, right? So the Mufassirin have mentioned that particular room, it had 7 doors. So she closed all of the doors. So now it's only Zulaykha and Yusuf alayhi salam in this room, and all of these 7 doors are shut. وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ وَقَالَتْ هَيْتَ لَكَ. She closed the doors, and then she says to Yusuf alayhi salam, come to me. Right? So now it's very clear what she wants. That she called him in here because she wants to commit an act of immorality with him. So immediately the reaction of Yusuf alayhi salam is قَالَ مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he gives him this knowledge and this wisdom, and he gave him taqwa as well, fear of Allah. Right? He says, قَالَ مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ. He says, I seek refuge in Allah from doing such an evil thing. إِنَّهُ رَبِّي أَحْسَنَ مَثْوَايَ. That, surely my master, and he's referring to Qitfir, right? The one in whose home he is staying. He has treated him so well, over the years. He's not treating him like a slave. He's treating him as a son. So he says, إِنَّهُ رَبِّي أَحْسَنَ مَثْوَايَ. Surely, my master, Qitfir, he has always been so good to me. He has always been so kind to me. He has always treated me so well, so I cannot betray him. You are his wife. How can I betray him? إِنَّهُ رَبِّي أَحْسَنَ مَثْوَايَ. That he has been so good to me. I'm not gonna do this with you. I'm not gonna betray my master like this. إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الظَّالِمُونَ. If I do such a thing, if I can betray my master, if I can betray Qitfir, who has been so good to me, if I can betray him in such a way, then I will be a zalim. I will be a person of evil. I will be a person of injustice to do such a thing. And then I will never be successful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never give me success if I do such an evil thing. إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Surely the zalimun, the evildoers, they are never successful, right? So this young man, he was presented with an opportunity to do something evil in private, right? But his fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept him away from doing that. That's a lesson we can learn as well today. Many of us, we're isolated in our homes, right? That's the most private type of setting that you can be in. You're in your own home, right? And you have a lot of time to kill. The shaitan, he's going to put it into your minds that, you have a lot of time. You can do this, you can do that, a lot of haram things, right? That people can do in privacy in their homes, right? But let's learn from Yusuf alayhi salam that you should have taqwa even in situations of secrecy, even in situations where nobody sees you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees you. You're never completely alone because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always watching you. So Yusuf alayhi salam understood this, and we in our current situation, we need to understand this as well. You may be alone in your home. That doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not watching you. Just like He sees you in public, He sees you in private as well. So when the shaitan puts these thoughts in your mind to do this and that, nobody is seeing you, remember Yusuf alayhi salam. إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الظَّالِمُونَ. He said, surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not make the zalimun, He will not make the evildoers successful. وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَرَّآ بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. And she had a great desire for him. Zulaykha, she really had a desire for Yusuf alayhi salam because he's so good looking. وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَرَّآ بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. And he would have also had a desire for her if it were not for the fact that he saw the proofs of his Lord. He had taqwa in his heart, right? If it were not for that taqwa, if it were not for that fear of Allah, then he also would have had a desire for her. And the Mufassirin have mentioned that she was also a very beautiful woman, right? But Yusuf alayhi salam, his taqwa prevented him from trying to do anything with her. وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ. She had a desire for him. وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَرَّآ بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. He would have also had a desire for her if it were not for the fact that he saw the proofs of his Lord, that he believed in Allah and he had fear of Allah. So that prevented him from having any type of desire for her. كَذَلِكَ لِنَصْرِفَ عَنْهُ السُّوءَ وَالْفَحْشَاءَ. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved Yusuf alayhi salam from sin, from evil, from immorality. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept him safe from this, from falling into this. إِنَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلَصِينَ. Surely Yusuf alayhi salam was from the chosen servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In one of the recitations, the most common recitation, Hafs, when we recite this verse, we say, إِنَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلَصِينَ. But in another qira'ah, it is إِنَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلِصِينَ. So if we say إِنَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلَصِينَ, it means he was from the chosen servants of Allah. Allah chose him. He made him a prophet. He chose him. So he's going to protect him from doing these evil things. He was mukhlas. He was chosen. In another qira'ah, إِنَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلِصِينَ. Surely he was from the sincere servants of Allah. So because of his sincerity in his obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept him away from falling into something that was evil. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him. إِنَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلَصِينَ. So this is the next part of the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, right? And inshallah next week we will continue with Yusuf alayhi salam's story and the lessons that we can gain from it. We will talk about Yusuf alayhi salam and his time that he spent in prison, and we will talk about the lessons that we can learn from his interactions with the other prisoners as well. We'll speak about that bi'idhnillah next week, and we'll save these last 10 minutes inshallah for any questions that people may have. Jazakumullah khaira wa barakallahu feekum wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. If anyone has any questions, we can take those now inshallah.
Jazakallah Sheikh. Everybody on the phone, you are muted. So if you do have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. You can also go ahead and ask the question using the chat, so that if you don't want to speak up as well. So. Sheikh, there's a question for you that says, can you please give us the mention of the reference from which the tafsir you are giving your talk from.
Okay, so I use a number of resources for the tafsir. Generally, I look into the tafsir of al-Tabari because al-Tabari is very detailed, and he mentions most of the narrations regarding any type of incident. That's the tafsir of al-Tabari, but it's only in Arabic. I don't think you will find the tafsir of al-Tabari has been translated. I don't think it's been translated into English as far as I know. So tafsir of al-Tabari, and also I like to use the tafsir of al-Baghawi. Al-Baghawi also very, very good tafsir, and I think it's the same thing. It's not been translated into English. So these are Arabic original resources. Al-Tabari and al-Baghawi are the main ones that I usually rely upon. And sometimes I will look through other books of tafsir as well, like Ibn Kathir, which is one of the most famous tafsirs, and As-Sa'di and some other books. But the main two that I usually rely upon are Al-Tabari and Al-Baghawi.
Assalamu
Can
alaikum.
you hear me? Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes.
Yeah, I had a question. I'm just curious because I noticed that the tafsirs often give a lot of information, like you were saying, for example, like how many doors or windows were in the house.
Yes.
And I'm just curious because I would guess that the Prophet ﷺ didn't give all of that information in like the hadith or something, right? Like where else do the scholars get that information from?
All right. So, a lot of these extra details, you will find them from narrations from some of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, who are basing these narration on what is known as Isra'iliyat. And Isra'iliyat basically are narrations from Bani Israel. So basically narrations from the Jews and narrations from the Christians, right? And the Prophet ﷺ said about the Isra'iliyat that you can narrate the Isra'iliyat. It is permissible to narrate the Isra'iliyat. But of course, if something contradicts Islam or what has been revealed in the Quran, then of course we know that is not true. If something is in accordance with what the Quran came with, if something is in accordance with the Quran or what was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, then we know that is true. And if something, it doesn't contradict the Quran or the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, but it's also not affirmed by the Quran or the Sunnah, then we can use those narrations, but we don't say we don't say with 100% certainty that this is true or this is false. So a lot of these narrations, especially regarding these prophets, these prophets who are also believed in by the Christians and the Jews, a lot of these narrations with these details, you will find them in the Isra'iliyat. And as long as there's no contradiction to what has been revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, then it is permissible to narrate these narrations.
Okay, okay.
Barakallahu feek.
All right. Any other questions? Again, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can ask the question using the chat as well. Okay. Check. I think we're good then. I don't think I don't have see any more questions in the chat, or
Okay.
I don't see folks unmuting themselves. So, alhamdulillah, jazakallah khairan again for joining. And for the rest of the folks on the call, thank you for joining. And please spread the word to your friends and family. And because we are doing this over online medium now, it doesn't just have to be our community, any other community, that has a free Tuesday night that they're not doing anything. And most people are not doing anything these during this period. So please encourage them to join as well so that they can benefit from this. And as always, please, the masjid is going through a difficult financial situation because of being shut down. So please support the masjid as much as you can and sign up if you can for whatever it may be to give on a recurring basis to the masjid. Jazakallah khairan again, Sheikh, and thank you for everybody else for joining.
Jazakallah khair. Thanks to everyone for coming and listening. Barakallahu feekum. May Allah bless you all.
Inshallah, we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.